And welcome to the June 9th, 2022 work session of the Keystone Central Board of Directors. We will start with flag salute and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Dietrich,
Here.
Mrs. Donahue,
Here.
Mr. Elling,
Present.
Mr. Johnston,
Here.
Mr. Knopf,
Here.
Mr. Koch, Ms. Lynch,
Here.
Mr. Miller, Mrs. Smith,
Present.
7 members present.
The board held an executive session this evening from 6:02 PM to 6:33 PM for legal matters. So our first presentation of the evening is the Loretta Woodson Awards.
So Carmen Banfield is here this evening to present these awards.
Thank you for having me tonight. I represent the Clinton County chapter of the Pennsylvania Association of School Retirees. Anyone that is working for the school district belongs to the Pennsylvania Association of School Retirees, not just.
Carmen, would you please use that microphone? The folks at home are having a hard time hearing you.
Is it on?
I believe so, but yeah, I think you have to
You
get
might
close
get
to it.
closer. You can have us, I don't know if you don't want to sit for a little bit, but.
The Pennsylvania School Retirees has to deal with everyone that is part of the school district. Okay? I'm here to present Rhonda Phillips and Megan Hull with a long overdue Loretta Woodson Award. They are dated 2020. Due to COVID and the death of our dear friend Donna Yost, who was the educational chair, that is why they were delayed. Loretta Woodson was a secondary teacher in English, then an instructor at Temple University, where she received her doctorate. She was a life member of the Pennsylvania Association of School Retirees. Upon her passing, she bequeathed the sum of her money to PASR to support public education. The purpose of her award is to honor an educator and a support professional. Each chapter selects the award recipients. They are presented with a framed certificate and a PASR pin. So, is Rolanda Phillips here? And Megan Hull? Rolanda? So, in recognition for your unselfish dedication and exemplary service to the Keystone Central School District in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we thank you on behalf of the youth of today and the future of tomorrow. Megan, for your unselfish dedication and exemplary service to Keystone Central School District in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we thank you for the youth of today. Come on. Did very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Can we get a picture real quick with you and the ladies? You want to do it back here? Okay. I will do that. Other duties as assigned. So then our next presentation,
Thank you, Carmen.
thank you, Carmen. Yes. Thank you. So next presentation's on our math and special education resources.
So rather than have a formal large presentation, just to let the full board know that the math resources were shared with the co-curricular committee of the board. We spent approximately 2 hours sharing with them all of the details about the resources and how they are aligned with the new math curriculum. So some of them are new resources, some of them are supplemental resources to supplement math curriculum resources that we've already had. And you'll see later on the agenda, there are math resources down there for your approval for next week, for your consideration. And rather than give you all another 2-hour presentation, we thought we would just give you a quick update to the full board and allow any members from the co-curricular committee to maybe share with you what they recommend. Curricular.
Go ahead, Jeff.
One of you.
You're the chair.
No, I'm not. I gave that
Oh.
up. Elizabeth is the chair.
I stand corrected.
Oh, okay. Okay, yes, you owe me, Roger. Okay, no, in all seriousness, it was amazing what these folks have put together. With everything going on. I am so proud to be sitting here today as a small little piece of that. We asked multiple questions. They had exceptional answers. I wish when I was in school, I had this. Roger, if you would have had this, you would love math. Fortunately, in my later education at Lock Haven University, I had an instrumental professor who took me aside, and all of a sudden the language of math just opened up for me and my world changed. The team that Dr. Martin has put together is exceptional. And I look forward to hearing all the updates as this goes through the system, through the teachers, through the principals, through the students. And I have every belief that this is stepping us so far forward. And if anyone has any questions or wants to follow up, please do, or come to the curricular meetings. They're fascinating and they're very uplifting, especially in today's world. So thank you all
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you for that. I just do want to make a point that the resources presented, there are K-4 resources that are for all students, and then also some tiered interventions for students who may need a little bit more, whether they're in regular ed, but also we have connected the resources for students in special education, getting direct instruction on their own level. All of the resources are aligned. So there's a K-4 recommendations, there are 5, 6 recommendations, there are different 7, 8 recommendations, and then algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and then additionally for financial literacy, which is a new course, along with pre-calculus and calculus resources. So a combination of textbooks, corrective math, some math interventions, and so forth. So just wanted to kind of give you an update. It's a comprehensive resources for K-12 mathematics, but they're not all the same thing.
Yeah, I just might add to that. I saw your hand out there, Jackie, and that reminded me that in their presentation, they did a really nice job of showing the different tiers and how that works with the different needs and the different levels of needs that the students have, and how it dovetails in nicely with the special ed piece to it. So I think it looks like, from what they presented, it looks like a really good program, and the way it's structured, I think it's going to work out real well. And I think the materials that are going to go along with it will match really well.
And Megan, can you confirm the committee that worked on this included more than just administrators, was the district program leaders at secondary and elementary for mathematics, along with? classroom teachers, instructional coaches.
Yeah, we had special ed representation on. And just an additional piece of information is all the resources are back here for viewing that will be out through next week's public board meeting. So that anybody who would like to preview those materials can do so. And we'll put them back out on this big table once the meeting is over tonight.
They've been on display for
Yes.
over 20 days at this point.
Yeah.
Any other board members have any questions or comments?
As long as 2 + 2 = 4, we're good.
We're good. We're still
Okay.
good.
I don't think they changed that yet.
Well, I don't know.
All right.
Depends on how you feel.
So we'll see those later on in the agenda. Okay, so our third presentation is our athletic study final report. So,
Okay.
Thank you. And while I
Rita.
usually introduce these at our facility committee, we've talked about nominating Mr. Johnston, who chairs that committee, to give the introductions and maybe a little background to the public for why we are, why we had this study and where we're headed with it. But
Well,
Todd, if you want to go to the table where you're going to need to be at a microphone.
Thank you for that intro. Yeah, way back, I think 9 or 10 months ago, we started this process with the facilities committee. And it started out, I think, initially, we were looking at, you know, something as to what we might want to do with for a baseball field, I think that's the real starting point. And then from that point, we started, it kind of expanded into looking at all of our athletic facilities in the 3 secondary schools at Bucktail, this building and these facilities here at the high school and down at the middle school. And so we enlisted ELA Sports to take a look at all of our facilities to give us an idea of what we might want to do in the future. And I emphasize what we might want to do. This was just to give us an idea of what we could possibly look at in the future. And I will also emphasize that this is just for that purpose. We have not committed any kind of funds to anything. We haven't made any decisions as to building baseball fields or redesigning any of the 3 campus athletic facilities. All we enlisted them to do was to take a look, which they did, and to give us an idea of what conditions our facilities are in, and maybe what we might want to look at doing in the future. So Todd Smith is with us from ELA Sports tonight. I think all of the board members got a copy of the entire 85-page document that kind of outlines what they found and what their observations were. And that's exactly what they were. So what I think we're going to do as a committee from here on is to look at all of it, look at the potential costs, and prioritize what we may be able to do as we move forward here with looking at these facilities. And I want to emphasize and repeat that this was just a starting point for anything we might want to do. So with that being said, I'm not going to take any more time because I know we have a lengthy agenda. So I'm going to turn over to Todd. Todd's going to give us kind of the Reader's Digest version of the report. We saw it pretty much in depth the other day at our last meeting, but he's going to hit the highlights. And if you have any questions, then maybe you can wait till he's done and then ask him at the end. So I'll turn it over to Todd and he can share what he has.
As far as the presentation.
You have to be really close to that mic.
Okay,
Sorry.
oh, it's okay. The, who's running?
Chad,
The
right
tech guy
behind you.
Okay.
You just
all
say advance and he'll go. He's
Tell him
still.
what page you want on.
Okay, all right. Yeah, just as Mr. Johnson did say, we did look at the facilities on all the campuses. And we split it up into the Bucktail campus, the Central Mountain campus, and Mill Hall campus. That's how I defined it in the study. And if you want to just go to the next slide. So the Bucktail campus, we identified each area that we were going to be looking at. A was the tennis, B was the baseball field, C was the Dwyer Field or Stadium, E is the softball field, and then, or D is the softball field, and E is the practice field. If you go to the next one, at Central Mountain campus, we looked at the stadium, softball field, C is the JV softball and multi-purpose field, D is the Gibson Family Tennis Center, and E, up in the far left-hand corner, is the baseball field. And then on the Mill Hall campus, the same scenario, we went through and identified the different elements that we would be reviewing and looking at. Tennis, pickleball courts, track in the field area, the multi-purpose field and softball area behind the track, McGill Field Stadium, and then the E is the field house and restroom facility. Now, as I looked at these, I reviewed, the condition of each of them, highlighted throughout the study, what the conditions, what my observations were. And after all of that evaluation and discussion, I discussed with the athletic directors, principals, and administrative people, and with the committee, the sports that take place at the different locations and facilities, the number of athletes that participate, and the number of events at each of them. And what it really boiled down to is we came up with some recommendations for renovations or rebuild. And we put some schematic budget costs with these. And as Mr. Johnson said, this is all very preliminary, conceptual, and for budgetary purposes and for planning purposes for future work that the school district wants to look at, prioritize, and move forward with projects as you deem possible and financially feasible. So if you go to the next slide, can you split screen so we would have, no? Okay. So at Bucktail campus, just a brief overview, and the next, don't go to the next slide yet, but the next slide gives you a breakdown of the recommended improvements in the schematic budget costs. But for Bucktail campus, generally what we recommend is the tennis courts should be a reconditioning rehabilitation project. And I itemized the improvements and put budget numbers to those. And so at each section is a total budget cost for what that renovation would be. The baseball field, item B, is really a rebuild of the existing field. It's would be new infield, new outfield, drainage, fencing, dugouts, and a scoring table for scoring and announcing. Also, access to it would be better. And throughout all of the facilities, ADA accessibility was looked at as well. And we went to the Dwyer Field. That is really a rehabilitation also. The field itself is in pretty good condition. There are some items that need to be fixed up in terms of the grass field itself, but generally it's in good shape. The bleachers need some upgrades. some access issues with it as far as ADA accessibility. There's some parking items that need to be addressed, additional parking provided and ADA parking. And the restroom facilities and the concession stand is recommended to be rehabilitated and actually expanded in the project. And then the softball field is in fairly good condition as well. There are some maintenance items and some addition items and some ADA accessibility. And then in the far top left-hand corner is the practice field. That's just to get some reconditioning for regeneration of the grass field, and it's primarily used for football practice. So if you go to the next slide, you can see in the report, each item, field identification, what the sport is, and then the recommended improvements are itemized, and then the schematic budget cost with the total of those. And then the next slide is just the final part of that. The next slide is Central Mountain High School, Central Mountain Campus. We started with the stadium. I didn't look at the stadium in great detail because it is in good shape. You just replaced the turf a couple of years ago. Primarily with the stadium, we looked at ADA accessibility and ADA parking provided. The softball field, it has some drainage problems. It does remain wet. There are some erosion problems with the infield. ADA accessibility is also an item that was looked at, and some additional ADA parking is suggested. The JV softball and multipurpose field, which is sort of between the two access driveways, that again, generally some upgrades to it, add dugouts, ADA accessibility, a spectator area, some bleacher pads, and some sideline fencing. Since it's a multi-purpose field and doubling with soccer, you can't put an outfield fence in it, but you can put some sideline fences with it. So you maintain that foul line in that area of playability. D, the Gibson Family Tennis Center. That's recommended basically to be a complete rebuild. And because you have 3 courts in 3 different sections, you have a total of 9 courts in 3 sections. You could choose to build 3 at a time, or you could choose to build them all. It all depends at the same time. It all depends on how the budget works out. But the budget estimate is a total for the whole thing, but it also breaks out 3 courts at a time. Now, the baseball field is a complete new field. It is up in the far left-hand corner. With that, it's, like I said, it's a completely new field. And because of the nature of the topography in the spectator area, in the field area, it's really looking at the difference of building the field on the lower level and having the spectator area predominantly up on the upper level. And it recommends, of course, all dugouts, locker room, restrooms at field level, restrooms and concession stands at spectator level, and at its parking. Unknowns are utility services. So they're to be determined. So if you go to the next slide. This is, again, the summary of the recommended improvements and each schematic budget cost for those. When you get to the totals of all of them, like I said, with the Gibson Family Tennis, item 1, that cost is for 3 courts, but the total encompasses all 9 together. And then the baseball itemizes the new field with parking, locker rooms, restrooms, concessions. And those, and utilities are to be determined at a future date if the school district wants to move forward with that, because we didn't have information on utility services and what's available up in that area at the time. And then the Mill Hall campus. We started with A was the tennis and pickleball courts, then the track and field area, and multi-purpose McGill Field and Field House. So the tennis and pickleball courts, they are used seasonally and intermittently for school use, but it's not a use that is needed or required for the school. And the condition that they are in with the cracks in the pavements and the variations in the pavement, the recommendation for those is to remove the courts and grade and seed the area and reserve the area for either outdoor recreation, physical education, or sometime in the future, perhaps building some parking or some other use in that area. The track and field area, because the track currently is under construction for a rebuild, I didn't look at that, but inside the grass, inside the track is the grass field. Basically, we want to upgrade, overseed, and in this study and the recommendation, it was to take McGill Field and make it a practice field and take the track in the field existing and create it as the stadium. So with that, we have to add scoreboard, add bleachers, add some parking, upgrade the drainage system for it, replace the goalposts and add some perimeter fencing. The softball area behind there, it's used not as a softball area anymore. It's an open field area. So really it is remove all of the softball components that exist and top dress, regrade the field and continue to use it as a multi-purpose practice area. McGill Field, if you're going to move forward with having the stadium where the track is, then you would want to remove the bleachers, remove the scores platform, scoreboard, goalpost, top dress, and over level and oversee the field. And the concession building that is way down on the far end, we want to look at some type of repurpose for that, because if it's no longer going to be your stadium, the concession area is too far away from where the track and new stadium would be to serve as a good stadium. So you'd want to repurpose that existing concession building. And then the field house, it's not a insulated and it's not able to be used in fall and early spring because of the weather conditions. It has to be shut down. So the recommendation for that was to upgrade and insulate the building, upgrade the HVAC systems, and just do general maintenance upgrades on the building so that it can be used year round. And so the next slides are, again, the breakdown, the recommended improvements and the schematic budget for those. So that's the, like Mr. Johnson said, the Reader's Digest version, condensed version. It is a study with recommendations, and the district has this now to use to look at potential projects, prioritization, and move forward with projects as you see fit for your budgets and for your needs that you have.
And I failed to mention whenever I introduced Todd, we also, through the course of this process over the last several months, which was kind of delayed by COVID and a whole list of things, we also at one point had asked him and his company to look at the traffic flow issues at the middle school. And
I
think,
forgot all about that.
and I think you can see, I mean, not that you need to address that now, but in the report, there are some recommendations as to what we might do to make the traffic flow situation there a little bit better by using a design. And again, this is just a suggested type of solution or possible solution to that traffic flow, because it is very congested over in that area, particularly, during the 2 times a day when they're picking up and dropping off. But I think what he had recommended after meeting with the committee, we looked at some different options. And I think there were some things, one option there in the front of the school that we had looked at for one area for buses and one for parent pickups and drop-offs.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I did miss that. What that is we separate the buses and the parent drop-off, so you don't have that intermingle with the 2 different transportation types. Right now, the drop-off for parents is in a very, very small area. And we observe the operation, and what's happening is that as they are exiting, they're backing up and they're causing a backlog of people trying to get in. So with the separation of them, we brought them both out front, but they have their separate driveways in their separate access points so that they don't cross over back and forth with each other. And we also added additional parking out in front of the auditorium as well as a recommendation, so that during events, you can use it either for the auditorium as well as the gymnasium. It gives closer proximity for parking for those venues, for events at those locations.
And ADA accessible parking as well.
Yes. And we maintain visitor and staff parking for the school itself as well.
I think I saw the recommended drawings on one of those slides.
Yeah, it was on the Mill Hall campus slide.
I do have a question.
Mhm.
The Mill Hall campus.
Mhm.
Whenever you take a look at moving the stadium, okay, I'm kind of looking at this and thinking, okay, my 70-year-old parents would like to go see their grandson or daughter competing. And I see a little bit of parking in front of the elementary school. Okay. But if that doesn't work, you're looking at these parents and elderly individuals having to walk the whole way from over by the middle school to that field. Is there any way of putting more parking in that area? I mean, I'm just curious.
Yes, there is actually, and it's not on the plan. If you slide over a little bit between the 2 buildings. In the recommended improvements, there is a line item to add 75 parking spaces for the track facility. There was some discussion between the elementary school and the middle school, what would occur in there, or if a school. I don't know if you want to add on to the elementary school in any way, that in itself could also impact some of the circulation and changes. So we didn't draft anything to show a specific layout, but it is planned to, add.
Well, I don't think we're gonna have to worry about expanding it, so,
Okay.
okay.
But yeah, no, definitely. You need the parking anyways for the track facility itself.
Right.
And so that is part of the recommendation to add. I put in 75 spaces in the recommendation
It's just not annotated on.
on
this
the plan.
picture.
Right, those
No.
objects.
Okay, all right, that's
Committee
cool.
did talk.
I was just, I wanted to see if that was even looked at, so.
And that was, I'll just add that that was part of the discussion of the committee along the way, is if we were to make where the track is more the main venue, then where do we add the parking and including the ADA parking? So Roger, your thoughts were spot on with what the committee had discussed as well.
Okay.
And there is space, but we just didn't we didn't get that far in the project to determine any clear options there.
Okay.
Yeah,
And part of it too is if the circulation remains the same, how we lay out the parking would be different than if we do relocate the parent drop off for the middle school. That whole area between the two schools can change,
Okay,
significantly.
Yeah, I think that would give us a lot more flexibility if we did go something like he has drawn there in the area in front of the school. Because that would give us one section would be just for buses, and then the other would be for the parent route where they would come in and pick up and drop off in that area on the upper part there where
Yeah,
the
and
buses
then-
would be below.
And then the island between the two, that's a plaza island for drop off and pickup.
Any other board members have any questions?
So this is, gives, to kind of summarize here, it gives us some real options to look at. There are, obviously, they have given us some dollar figures that would potentially be the cost of doing these, and that is, of course, at today's numbers. So, and anytime you get into any kind of projects, not that we're going to do all of them or even any of them, but it is, as you know, very expensive. So Todd's given us, and his company's given us a lot to think about, a lot to consider here. And in the next few months, committee's going to sit down and prioritize based upon what resources we have and the needs, and go from there. So thank you, Todd. We appreciate you being with us tonight.
Elizabeth had a question. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry, Elizabeth.
No, that's okay. Thank you very much. And thank you for all the clarification. The study doesn't mean that the board committee members approve it at any means whatsoever. Okay, it's just their snapshot of what we have. So, but one thing that was very, very interesting that I did not know that Todd explained to us during a meeting. Now, Todd, if I hate to put you on the spot, but you explained to us in real grave detail. Now, let's say we build a baseball field. And you say, well, let's save some money. Let's not put in the dugouts. Let's not put in the water. Let's not put in the toilets. And it was like, Todd had rules and regs that we have to follow. Todd, would you please explain that if we do build something by law, what type of infrastructure we must provide the public?
Well, there are things that you do need to do to provide to the public. Now, the first, of course, is ADA accessibility. You have to be able to have people be able to get there to use the facility. And once you're in the facility, it has to be accessible throughout and around the facility. Restroom facilities come into play. Permanent restrooms come when you have permanent bleachers. You can have temporary or portable bleachers, and you don't necessarily have to have restroom facilities provided. The challenge with this particular area and site of the school property is access and distance from other infrastructure that you have. There is no infrastructure up there. There's no accessibility or no way to get from the high school property to this facility. Some time ago, the school district did go through a permitting process to put an access drive from between the field house and the softball field up through the property. And it crossed a Pennsylvania waterway, and the permits were issued. It was not constructed, and the permits are no longer valid. And so the only access that you have, unless you go through that significant permitting process, is from the public road. And there are wetlands behind the school, behind the stadium back in that area. So that becomes the main challenge with this piece of property is its location, accessibility, and distance from existing infrastructure that the school has. So I would think if you want to build a facility, you want to be able to provide for not only the spectators, but also the participants in the sports, as well as the coaches and the officials, and have the facilities at that location for them to use: restroom facilities, locker facilities, sewer, water, electricity, all the amenities that you need for a functioning facility.
Okay, thank you. So in other words, if we have bleachers that are not permanently installed, we don't have to have toilets, functioning toilets. We don't have to have functioning sinks. We don't have to, is that, I mean, that's sort of what I took away from your last meeting with the committee. Is that correct, or am I wrong?
It is, that's a code, a code citation. Yes, if you don't have permanent bleachers, you do not have to have restroom facilities.
And that's for like the track or the football field or everything, right? Not just the baseball, right?
Correct.
Okay, got it. Okay, clarified. Thank you.
Mhm.
And something else I just want to make sure everyone knows is that this was not Todd's responsibility to look into this. Okay, he did a tremendous job with what he was asked to do. It was a snapshot. Boom, he did it. Something that I'm looking forward to discussing in the committee is possibly looking and working with other municipalities to see maybe we can do upgrades at facilities we're already using. Maybe it's a bad idea. I don't know, but this is going to be a fun challenge. Input from the community as this rolls along is going to be so helpful. Who knows what's going to happen, but I'm so grateful that we've gone this far, and I look forward to the future and the input from the community, and hopefully we can have community members work with us. I don't know. It'll all work out though. It'll all work out. We'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Moving on to the hearing of visitors. We have one person signed up. We have Mr. Roetter. And just as a reminder, you have 4 minutes.
Well, hopefully I can be briefer than that. Thank you for your time this evening. And this is, I guess, a timely conversation I had following this presentation here. I think a week ago, we were given a heads up of the possibility that the district was looking at the tennis courts at the middle school and removing them. And we were playing pickleball on those on last Friday morning as that was brought up. And all of a sudden, we were mobilized, and I either volunteered or was drafted to come here and express our concerns about that possibility. I understand these are just recommendations you're getting. The gentleman here has just had parameters and he followed them. As someone who lives in the neighborhood for the last 24 years, has been part of that growing number of pickleball players that started scheduling as soon as school was out on Thursday. We were playing on Friday, and every 3 mornings a week for the rest of the summer until school starts, we will be there, or somebody will be there probably playing with numbers of 10, 15 to 30 people, which is more than actually we have room for. That's why we're searching for other places to play, such as Hannah Park, working on a project there with the city on that. It's become quite a, it's been very useful for us as someone, myself as someone who lives in the neighborhood. It would be a loss to the community. Mr. Bossert, the mayor of Mill Hall, called me the other night. He's concerned when he heard something about that as well. Again, I understand it's just on your recommendation list. You may get to it. Who knows when you'll get to it? And I understand that situation, and you have those dollars that you have to deal with. And I know it's a difficult situation altogether. But I also, I call myself a pretty knowledgeable of what goes on in the middle school after 12 years being over there. And I know how much that court is being used. The gentleman here said it is seasonal, true. It may not be required. Maybe racket sports are not required. But it is also the only hard surface area that the phys ed department has to go outside and make use of. And it would be a big loss to them as well. I think we would have had phys ed department, the borough people, a few other folks in the pickleball group, and more neighbors here. But I think when we had a better understanding that this is just a recommendation that you may consider down the road, we can save a lot of the argument for down the road. And I will not take much more of your time, but I'm sure you are going to have discussions on almost every decision you have to make on no matter what facility it is. My special interest is just the tennis courts at this point. And I would hope you would think long and hard about the cost, not just the dollar wise, but also to the community as well as the kids who do make use of those pretty much every day. And it would be a loss to the phys ed department to not have that facility there as well. I thank you for your time. So.
Thank you. We appreciate your input.
Thanks, Mark.
All right.
I'm just gonna let you know, I had no idea what pickleball is. I just looked it up. This is the first time I've ever,
Tennis.
what's that?
Old people's tennis, they would call it now, so.
Old people's tennis.
Hey, I might want to get into that.
We have, most of us are more experienced adults like myself anymore, but we've had high school kids, college kids, a lot of other adults of various ages showing up now because it's a quick and easy game. It's nice to play with the doubles. You don't have to run. yourself
That's
to death
cool.
load. So it's a good game, and
All right.
it's growing all the time. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, so Dr. Martin, your report for the week. Yes, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I don't mean to be out of line, but I just want to thank the gentleman and or whenever the public comes forward. But I do want to say this. Anyone who knows me knows that I live adjacent to the pickleballs. No, I don't play tennis. No, I don't play pickleball. And seeing the community, it's like a community hub. And yes, our goal is for students. We focus on the students, the education, yes. But since this has all started, I just think that I see school districts as also being an outdoor recreational opportunity for communities, and that builds communities. It builds stronger housing, economics. I mean, these discussions we'll have in the facilities committee meetings, but I just want to let you know that I have no personal connection to the pickleball tennis courts at all, zero. But I do see how the housing and the quality of the neighborhood has changed dramatically, especially since the pickleball folks have moved in. The neighborhood has definitely gone up. And I can't say for a fact it's because of that, but I see all age groups out there, all demographics, and it's a hub, but thank you.
I do think it's worth mentioning, and Dr. Rowetter said that eloquently as well, that the decisions that the committee has been discussing are not just based on dollars. There was a lot of thought that goes into it, and just want to assure you that of that. The usage, that's why there was such a big usage done. And we were aware from early on about the amount of pickleball players and the community usage there as well. I recently spoke to Don Mansfield this morning regarding the usage of the PE department, and assured him as well, because he heard the same rumor that the board was going to take action tonight to shut down these courts, which was not true. So just want to clarify that. And that before any, it's been my experience with this board and with the committee members that they take a lot of information into account when making any decisions or recommendations to the full board, which would include the usage and the impact on the community. So I just wanted to mention that along with Elizabeth's comments.
All right, thank you.
I have a very brief update for you this week with our packed agenda. Just wanted to let everyone know that the COVID-19 update, the cases from the past week were less than 0.5% in our overall staff and students within the district. So that is lower than the 1% from the previous week. We held 2 successful graduations last week at Bucktail High School and Central Mountain High School for the class of 2022. I thank the board members and all the members of the community who were there to celebrate this milestone for our graduates. We currently have over 300 students sign up for our summer programs, including the Keystone Camp. I know that number continues to grow. And we also have started to get our programming in place for our extended school year that we do every year as well. Walk-in Wednesdays started this past week as we are taking extra measures to recruit viable candidates for various vacancies throughout the school district. And this past Wednesday was our first opportunity. We did have a few individuals who just walked in, and we were able to help them with applications and look at their resumes, and in some cases conducted interviews on the spot. And the board should plan to see some additions to our personnel recommendations over the next few summer months based on how this goes. So we're hoping to attract new candidates. So spread the word. You do not have to have an appointment. It's between 9 and 2 on Wednesdays throughout the summer.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to our committee reports. Curricular, co-curricular, anything other than the curriculum?
I just want to say Dr. Martin is always, she's got all the flash points. She words it beautifully. Again, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be on that committee. And so Dr. Martin, if there's any highlights that you feel the public should be aware of, and the other board members, may I defer to you since this is really your.
Sure.
Thank
I'm just going to refer to the meeting minutes that are also on your agenda, in addition to the math resources, which is what we spent most of our time on, in addition to the special education math curriculum additions. We did talk about participating in a PSU inquiry and a professional development process. That is also on tonight's agenda. And the agreement between us and PSU does need the board approval. And it is really based on the initiatives from Act 70, which is law and has been for quite some time in teaching sensitive topics, typically related to special education. Additionally, we did discuss some changes to the academic credit requirements that would come up this fall. It would change the graduation requirements for the class of 2024, 25, and 26 subsequently. It would give the students more flexibility with their electives instead of, in a way, we have what's I would call selectives. So you can choose your electives within certain categories, which limits voice and choice. And the reason this came about was because in our most recent CTC audit, it was noted to Mr. Lynch and I that students who choose CTC options are limited in their choices and may be inhibited from being program completers in our CTC, if in fact they are required to make selections within other elective areas, that the electives within the CTC should suffice for their graduation requirements. And their recommendation was that we remove those things. It doesn't eliminate the total number of graduation requirements. It just doesn't force kids into certain content area electives. So more to come on that, I suppose, when the handbooks come out, because it was talked about with the curricular co-curricular committee. And we also looked at the Bucktail High School football numbers. They went up this week, or the week of that. We were concerned a little bit if we would have enough students to safely play, and it looks like we will. We also discussed mock drunk driving events for next school year around prom time, getting the planning underway. We also discussed the teacher information on a new program through our Career and Technical Center with the zip code of general education. So we have an application into the state. It was returned for a few updates, and then those have been resubmitted. So we're looking at adding that program at some point in next school year or the following school year. And then the other thing we talked with that committee about, in addition to the policy committee, would be the lesson plan policy 111. We're working on some changes to that policy along with some administrative regulations that would, what we believe, improve planning procedures and for instruction and learning. It was a pretty packed agenda. So that was a quick rundown. I'm sorry.
Sounds like it. All right, Mr. Johnston, facilities.
Okay, for once, I have a rather brief report. Most of our meeting, as I mentioned earlier, was spent looking at the LA report and having Todd present to us and give us a rather detailed rundown and presentation on the program, even more in depth than you heard this evening. The only other item that we had on the agenda was at that point was one change order to the track project. I guess when they started looking at and Susan or Rob can correct me on this if I'm giving it wrong, but I think it was the Javelin area that when they got into there, they realized that it needed to be resurfaced. And so there was a change order that is appearing on the agenda later on for, I believe it's $14,334 to do that work. And then as of today, they came up with another issue. I guess it was the high jump area. Okay, that needed some work that they had not anticipated. And that change order is $58.64. So those both will be taken out of the same line item from the general fund to do that. And the committee is recommending that we go ahead and approve that. And that's it.
All right, thank you. And then the policy committee. I'll just defer to you.
Yeah, I was nominated, right?
Yep.
Just in quick summary, there is not anything on your agenda this evening that was discussed at yesterday's policy committee meeting.
Yesterday.
And in general, we looked at about 4 or 5 policies, I think, from the 200s section, and it's part of our cyclical review. So we're currently working on the 200s policies, and the committee was okay with us adjusting our timeline to be more reasonable. We believe that the 200 policies are going to take more time to go through and make sure they're right than maybe some of the other sections have. So they're going to take a little longer than anticipated.
Okay.
And you may see some items from yesterday's policy committee meeting on the July agenda.
All right, so move on to the report section. We have our treasurer's report, financial reports, student enrollment. Any questions on those? And then number 4 is the communication plan, which was one of the goals for Dr. Martin for this year, was to create a communication plan. And we'll have her briefly describe it.
So rather than presenting the entire plan to you, I know that the board has seen the draft plan in different stages throughout the spring semester. I did lead a committee of multiple stakeholders, including Tracy Smith, who was a part of the committee and attended all of the meetings. And the plan is meant to improve communications in 4 main goal areas as outlined in the plan, But also, this was born out of part of our comprehensive plan to where we wanted to improve timely and targeted communications with our stakeholders, internal and external, as well as help to build trust between the district and the community. So the plans that are in place, are the plans that you'll see, really do not require board approval. It's just something that I wanted to bring forward to the board at a public meeting, show the many people who were involved in that, and show how we're working to improve internal and external communications. But if the board has any questions about the plan or any feedback, this is a great time. I will say that even though it's a final document, it's also a living document that as time changes, just kind of like our 10-year facility plan or any of the other plans that we have annually, it's my belief that every summer we should probably take a look at the communication plan and determine if we need to make any changes. As we all know, technology changes rapidly, which has a direct impact on communication. And I think out of all the things in the plan, the priority that became clear was having a communication app for parents, because particularly at the secondary schools, people seem very happy with the app that we use at the elementary level. However, our secondary parents feel that they don't get a lot of timely communication other than emergency notifications. So our team has already actively been looking at some solutions to that, whether that is using 2 different apps, elementary, secondary, or finding one app that does it all. We know that that is a priority, and I would expect that you'll hear more from us on that topic before the end of the summer.
Yes, Elizabeth?
Thank you. And I'm sorry, it's my fault, Dr. Martin. You sent this out weeks ago for us to review and to comment, and I apologize. So it's my fault. And this is so nitpicky, but I just wanted you to consider this. On page 13, and it's not critical. It's really not critical, but I just don't want to see a pigeonhole, because we all want you to be out there with as many people as possible when time allows, et cetera, et cetera. Page 13, row 3, when it says local service groups, would it be a consideration just to say such as, but not limited to? So you don't pigeonhole yourself and say that's,
Let me just get to that
Yeah,
spot.
those were just examples of those groups.
yeah, but
that
just
she
was,
does- that she's already involved with, but yeah, it's definitely not limited. Because in the audience, we have all internal and all external audiences also.
right. Okay, just so it's not just, okay, that's it. But otherwise it's beautiful, and this will just keep growing, and this is something we're all looking forward to. So thank you.
I think what I can easily do is just put examples, that like the examples in there. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Sorry. We, as the board, we need to appoint 3 voting delegates, 3 voters for the 2022 Delegate Assembly for PSBA. Do I have any? Is anybody interested in being a delegate? I know, it's so exciting, and we're all going to fight over it.
Isn't that at the conference?
It's not
Either
this
one.
year.
You can do it one way or the other.
Okay, yeah. So the, it has here, it's November 5th at 9 o'clock at the headquarters or via Zoom. So yeah, the conference is a couple days before that. So it's kind of separate this year, it looks like. So
Is anybody planning on going to the conference?
I am. Roger, did you decide if you?
Yeah.
Roger and I, so I just need one more person. Come on, but you know you want to do it.
I have plans that day.
I bet you do. Your
It's
social
football
calendars
season.
all
It's
filled up.
football season.
It is football season.
I can.
You can do it, David. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right. So we'll get you, we'll fill you in on all that. and
That's fine.
what
That's an
that
The
entails.
bad part is I'm not gonna be able to dress up as Jake from State Farm this year.
Nope. Why aren't you?
Because I'll be down there and I can't go
Oh.
Halloween, and
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
It's an exciting experience. I've done it.
You've seen me.
So then we also have the special ed plan that is necessary to be done, what, every 3 years?
Every 3 years as part of the comprehensive planning process. I did not feel it was necessary to give you a full-blown presentation because if you look at the document, it really is a form by which the district fills in information and affirms that we're following those state laws. So you have the document in its entirety. It's posted for the public as well and will be submitted to PDE after the appropriate timeframe, but it is something that the board does approve. So I would ask that you take some time to read through that. It is a lot of dry information and just a lot of data. But that's, if you have any questions, I would take them now, or at any time you could email me and or Dr. Barnhart, and we could get your questions answered. There are not a lot of changes from this document and the one that we submitted 3 years ago, because in reality, this is what we have to do.
I've looked through some of this since it is rather voluminous. But is there anywhere in here, like in summary, where that breaks down numbers by exceptionalities? I'm sure, I know it probably.
Liz, I'm sorry to make you do this, but microphone, please.
Doesn't break down numbers because we don't disclose those, but it does break down our teachers and what level of support that they provide across the continuum of services for our programs.
Okay, I was just curious as to how many we had in each. I would assume we have quite a few speech and so on. And
Speech just continues to grow.
okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right. And then we have various law enforcement MOUs with all the local agencies, law enforcement agencies that we renew every year.
Yep, there are no new agencies on here. These are just an annual renewal, and again, required by law to have an MOU with those agencies in our area for police protection.
And then section 8's the minutes from the last meetings within the last month or so. Any questions on any of those? All right, now, under business, we have our bills for payment for the month, the depositories. Any questions on either of those? Number 3 is our final general fund budget. Any questions on that? Hasn't really changed since the last time we looked at it.
This has not changed at all since the last time we presented it multiple times at public meetings. And additionally, just want to state that this budget does not include any of the additional funding that the governor has proposed. We don't want to count on something that we don't actually have. And we don't want to spend money that we don't have a commitment to have. So it is the same numbers that you've seen at the previous meetings. And no tax increase.
All right, number 4 is the homestead and farmstead resolution for the purpose of reducing school district property taxes. Number 5 is the budget transfers, authorizing the business manager to make any necessary revisions to the general fund budget for the fiscal year that ended June 30th, 2022, and report any revisions to the board. And then number 6 is the resolution for the committed funds. Have any questions on any of those? Number 7 is pretty much just a notice with the consolidation, or whatever you want to call it, of LHU, Bloomsburg and Mansfield, that they'll now be known as Commonwealth University of Pennsylvania. So they just wanted to make the changes on the name change.
So we have agreements with Lock Haven, Bloomsburg, and Mansfield for different things, and as an official notification of business, they're letting us know the university name change. A
And-
formality only, it does not change any of the contracts or any of the agreements that we currently have in place.
And then we have the ELA final report that we just heard the presentation on. Numbers 9 through 13 are the math curriculum that we went over. Anybody have any questions on any of that?
Just want to make sure that you're aware that the funding sources are listed for each of the curriculum materials there. A lot of that being paid with ESSER funding, which would have traditionally been money that was budgeted for in our general fund. But due to the volume of ESSER funding and it's an allowable expense, we were using a lot of that money for these curricular resources.
Number 14 is the Penn State University Professional Development Agreement, not to exceed $20,000 paid for by title funds. Number 15 is the PA Friends of Agriculture Foundation. This is the Agmobile.
Yes, this is the mobile ag lab, which several years ago was only to a few high schools, maybe paid by for PTO, but we felt it was such a great curricular resource that we started budgeting for all of our elementary schools to have access to the mobile ag lab. And we've been paying for that through, I think, some title funds in other years. And this would be, this year, looks like we're paying for it out of the general fund.
Next is a Student Services Agreement, Title I. It's paid for by a title grant. And then the use of Ames Web. Again, paid for by title grant.
So I will just say that 17, 18, and 19 are all systems that we've had in place for a couple of years, and they're just the renewal notices for those technology tools.
Perfect.
They'll have to do with assessment and an assessment and data warehouse.
Can we go back to 16 for a second?
Mhm.
Can you give us a little more details on what Amy Clark is, how we're going to be utilizing her?
I believe it's my understanding that she services a non-pub.
Okay.
It would be at St. John's.
How many pupils or students do we have going there that we're paying her?
So it's not, I don't know that it's calculated that way, Butch. It's just a matter of students that go there that need title services. Their federal dollars for that come through us. So there's so much of our title money that needs to be given to the non-public schools so that they have the same services. So I don't know how many students they service. I don't know that you get that information, do you, Megan, since you manage that grant?
We only have we have 2 students there. And so that's how it's calculated based on the number of economically needy students who are from our district but attend there. So then some of our title monies have to be spent there accordingly.
No different than the Lock Haven Catholic School, but
I
here,
just didn't know why
there
they
we
go,
send
yeah.
we share a teacher with Lock Haven Catholic School. Here, they prefer contracted service.
They get an allotted amount. It's how they spend it is up to them.
And then number 20 is the agreement with the Central Intermediate Unit 10 to participate in the Online Learning Association for our cyber school program. Any questions on that?
Just that rate has not increased in several years. Is that correct, Justin? It hasn't, it's still stabilized?
It's pretty minimal.
All right, and we have our infant development transportation agreement. And then we have various contracts that were on yearly renewal.
I do want to point out that the Nittany Learning Services contract is reduced number of seats by 2 based on the degree of need that our principals are seeing for the beginning of the fall. This year is less than last year, and those seats are interchangeable. So we are reducing from 10 seats to 8.
Tracy, I have a question on those.
Yes.
I saw in the Mary-Kay behavior one, it says clearances and credentials will be available if requested. did we request those? And the other two doesn't mention it at all. Did we request to have copies of the file of all this?
Yes, Mr. Kondo requested all those and then also cross-reference with their employee list to make sure we had them all.
Okay, is that something that should be in the contract? I know, that, like I said, it's in 22, the Mary Kay one, it says if requested, it's not mentioned in the other two at all.
It's not something we've typically put in the contracts before. I know Susan, you've reviewed them, but if that's something that the board wishes us to add to contracts with outside services, we certainly can do that. If we're going to add it to the contracts, I would like to put the onus on them that they have to supply them to us rather than us request them. And so if they're not provided at any point in time, that is on them.
I thought we discussed that earlier, because some issues with the Nittany one, I thought we discussed having clearances and credentials sent to us and stored on the facility. right?
We did, and that's happening. It's just we didn't change it in contract language. We just asked it and they complied.
That was for certifications and.
It was certifications and
and
clearances.
Clearances, yeah. I think it's something we need to start including in our contracts. So we make sure that, like you said, put it the responsibility back on them to do it. But I think if we're gonna have a contract with them to provide services, they have to provide us their clearances and credentials.
Yeah, it hasn't been an issue, but I think if the board desires, we can go back to these three agencies and tell them that the board desires an additional language to require that. And you're talking,
Absolutely.
but you're talking about clearances and credentials or just clearances?
I think both. Wasn't there an issue with someone brought up clearances with the Nittany?
There was-
learning?
There were
There's some questions.
accusations
Yeah.
raised that were unfounded. But the board wanted to see the evidence of that, which you did, or which, you know, you
I
had
think to
asked for
prevent
that
anything in the
extra
future
step.
from happening, if we have them on file, we would have them readily available if some accusations are.
Correct.
correct. Yeah, I just
So
think
now
something we need to
they're
have.
all on file.
Yes, Elizabeth?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. In today's world, Mark Kondo, he's our go-to man. Any certificates, credentials, anything, onus is on the company that we're paying. They give it to us, please. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so we can,
Susan, if you would reach out to those three with the language, you want to draft that language and we'll check it and then reach out to them.
Thank you.
thank you.
And I'm sorry,
Go ahead,
just
Polly.
just to clarify, that is for contracted services only, correct?
It's for contracted, my understanding, thanks for clarifying, Polly. My understanding is that it would be for people that the district has contracted services that work directly with our students.
Okay. I'm only clarifying because I know that there was a government agency that was having issues. They were having to provide all of their clearances for all of their employees that would be in the building. And that wasn't a necessity. That was because they're not contracted services.
Okay, I think I understand. I feel like I have a solid understanding what the board is asking, and so we'll.
I just,
see.
I know we had some issues previously
Mhm.
with one of these contractors.
We didn't have any issues with the
Well, we were-
services.
Allegedly.
Yes.
Yeah, Okay.
Yeah, we didn't have issues.
Right.
So, but it's good to have. All right. Then we have the 2-year agreement with West Branch Drug and Alcohol for SAP services. Is this a yearly renewal too? Or 2
Yeah,
years?
Christine, is that? Yeah, for SAP services.
Okay. And then .com therapy.
We've been using .com therapy to help us with our speech and language sessions because we have had trouble filling some speech and language spots, but we've been able to find some and fill the vacancies, but the degree of need has been greater than that. And so we've been looking at some, and this is for our school psychs, not the speech. Sorry, I just found that on there. We have used them for speech in the past. Okay. And for school psych.
We have the CIU 10 special ed services agreement. And not to exceed $348,912.36. And then looks like we have food service bids.
Just to point out, that's where we get the vision, the physical therapist, occupational therapy services, and also some speech services through the IU. Now, it sounds like a lot of money, but there are 4 different areas in which they are providing services to us, which I think is cost effective based on alternatives.
And numbers 28 through 37 are various bids. Food service, nurse supplies, art, music, municipal waste. Well, that's a different one. That's a contract. Any questions on any of those?
Yes, please.
Yes, Elizabeth?
Thank you. After the bids come in and they've done everything they need to do, I'm requesting that we consider, Susan, we're anticipating prices to go up. I think it's pretty much a given, but hearing percentages, just rough percentages, I don't want anyone to spend hours on it, but let's say, the food bid went up by 5% or the art supplies went up by 10%. That would be just very helpful and informative after all this is done.
We did, we looked at that, Elizabeth, for each bid as they came in, but some of the changes that we've made are, we may not have ordered the same number of specific items that we did last year. So we tried to offset any of the increases with ordering needed materials and not so much having any backstock in the warehouse. So tried to control costs that way through the bid and ordering process. Prices are up. Some of them that we've talked about that we can't cut at all. The nursing with the meds and stuff like that is up significantly. The art bid is a significant increase. But again, we've gone back to those departments and had conversations about just ordering what we need and not ordering a lot of surplus.
Okay, well, of course, that's why you do a super terrific job. But if you do see any unusual spikes or anything, just, please just let us know. Because, we're anticipating it. I think everyone is. So, okay, thank you.
I think the good news is there, Elizabeth, the fact that we do the zero-based budgeting already takes care of the fact that we budget first for the need to haves. And then if the nice to haves come if there's the resources. And so we're still making sure, and as Susan said, we did budget some contingency funds to make sure that we can get the need to haves in this time of inflation and, delayed resources coming to us, manufacturing delays.
Next is awarding the bid to Eastern Alliance for our workers' compensation insurance. And then we have the agreement for enterprise on our fleets, vehicle fleets.
On that one, the order will go in 22, 23. However, the backlog for these, it's greater than 40 weeks. So you may not see the payment side or delivery happen until a year from now in the fiscal year. So I just wanted to bring that up because you're encumbering funds for 23, 24, essentially.
Is it 40 weeks or 40 months?
Weeks.
Okay, the agenda says months. We should probably edit that.
Oh, no, wait, I'll double check.
Okay.
I can't answer that. I'll double check. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Because 40 months, 40 months is quite a long time.
It's almost 40 years.
We're still waiting for the year ago order.
It's probably weeks.
Same as the mowers.
Yeah.
Then we have a quote approval for Ehrlich for pest control services. Keystone Security for fire alarm services. Keystone Security for district central station monitoring. Eastern Elevator for annual services for the year. Prize Fire Protection, fire extinguishers and fire suppression system inspections. And Keystone Sports Construction for the track and field project. Any questions on that?
That's one of the
And
change orders.
That's one, yep, the change.
And then
order, yep.
there's, well, there will be a second one there next week.
They'll be
correct?
added next week. And then there's a CTC vehicle donation from a member of the public that we need to approve. Yes, Elizabeth?
I have a quick question. I love the CTC vehicle program, and this is wonderful. I don't remember, when we toured the CTC, did they have an automotive spray area where they actually can, or is that something they have to do outside? Do we have an internal commercial grade sprayer?
Yes, we have an internal paint booth. However, it's important to note that we do not have an auto body tech program. It's an automotive technology program, but there is an internal paint booth, and our agricultural mechanics program also uses that for the FFA tractor that they restore and some other things. But yes, we have an internal paint booth that is ventilated and has all the safety features.
Wonderful, thank you.
All right. Under personnel, we have our various hires, resignations, leave of absences. A lot of summer hires for the year for Keystone Camp and the SY. Any questions on those?
I have one. I'm just curious how someone can be on the property services list, the Keystone Camp Assistant list, and the Keystone Camp Substitute list. How can the same people be on those lists? Aren't they doing pretty much the same thing at the same time?
Microphone,
Microphone.
Susan.
Programs are different times, different days of the week, and these individuals wish to work all of them, plus help us in property services. So we are thankful.
The Keystone Camp substitutes are typically Keystone, or if they're listed as an instructor, we also list them as a substitute so that if we have a regular teacher out, we could utilize some of the support staff to fill into the role of instructor for that day. So we have to list them as both, so we can pay them if they fill in for an instructor, that we can pay them the instructor rate. So they're kind of have the option to function in two roles, but they're not functioning in two roles every day.
Yeah, I just don't understand how the names could be on there.
Yeah, it's definitely confusing. Yeah,
That's a great question.
yeah, it is.
And we have some club advisor hours. So then moving on to athletics, we have the athletics and student activities personnel.
I do want to mention that we may see some changes to this before next week. And if we have any changes to this, I know some of the details are being worked out for some of the fall sports and assistant coaches and junior high programming. So we will email the board that there's an adjustment to the agenda for next week if as that comes through. We just weren't able to get them all ironed out for you for tonight.
And then we have the Susquehanna Transit transportation bid for athletics. Sportsman's football, the equipment reconditioning. And
Can,
then.
can we go back to
Sure.
the athletic transportation for a
Yep.
second? I see that there's a 1% fuel charge surcharge per mile above for, I guess it's every, if I'm reading this correctly, a fuel surcharge will be added to the per mile rate. 1% above $4.60. So we're already up to $5 now.
Mhm.
So that could
For each 8 cents over the 4.60 per gallon, so.
that could
yeah.
become significant, especially if things keep going.
Yep.
As they are.
We don't have to worry about anything going over $10.
But it's nice though that, yes, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for bringing that up. Is there any, we were very fortunate to have Susquehanna Transit, and they've been extremely flexible given all their challenges. And they have donated in the past for special events, but is there, it does make me a little nervous if, you know, how high it might go. Or is there any wiggle room there? I mean, I know they're already pinched, but
They're the only vendor that bid. It was put out for public bid, but I will note that the very next paragraph says that they are donating back $20,000 towards the athletic transportation
Right.
program.
and that's what they did the year before and the year before. I believe it was 10,000 a couple years ago. So that's the other question is I don't remember if it was the same last year, or I actually think this sounds like a little bit more, but don't worry about it right now.
It's the same. It says, no, it's the same fuel clause is attached as last year. So we had the same.
Of the
clause.
donation.
And the
the
donation, I believe, is the same too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, it's extremely helpful. I just,
Yep.
No,
maybe
I
if the donation could be a little bigger to offset, I don't know. And I know you guys do your best and the bid's in, but
No.
it is making me, it is nervous. It's nothing we can do about it, but
Yeah, we can't control it
Mhm.
and I,
No.
yeah, they need, unfortunately, their costs are increasing too.
Susan, it's a
Yeah.
curiosity question. If our costs increase based on the fuel, does that change our reimbursement rate from the state level? Does not. So the inflation costs are passed on to the district.
Right. Athletics isn't reimbursed anyway.
Yeah, no, I just saw that and was, and with the way that things are going, it's just crazy. but
Yep, we'll be paying. it
I
this year.
understand. I understand why it's there, but
That's wishful thinking.
So then items 4, 5, and 6, girls soccer uniforms, baseball uniforms for Bucktail and Central Mountain High School girls basketball uniforms. They are in the rotation. Yes, Elizabeth?
we've spoken about this, just that the, I'm assuming it's not a board responsibility. It's not, but they'll just say like the Bucks or the Wildcats.
I wouldn't assume that.
I think that's up to the individual coaches and teams probably.
I think the athletic directors
athletic
work with them
director.
on that.
Yep.
I think what you're referring to is the term lady.
Yes. Oh, yeah, we're all one team. We're all one school district. Yep, we're all
Well,
one.
I think that has, as you said, it has been discussed before at the curricular, co-curricular meeting, not recent months, but I know previous months. And it was my understanding that we weren't making any changes because calling them the Lady Bucks or the Lady Wildcats has been something that's been part of the tradition and the culture here. And it's not my recommendation to remove that from the uniforms unless the board is directing us to do so.
no, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
I find that no reason to do that. I don't find it offensive at all, and it has been tradition, and I don't see any reason to change it.
And then after the uniforms, there's additional booster summer fundraisers.
I think you skipped the equipment reconditioning.
I'm sorry. No, I did mention it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
we had
Okay, sorry.
the football equipment reconditioning too. It was up there. Any other questions on athletics? Okay. Under negotiations, there's a few MOUs that we've discussed. Any questions on any of those?
I would just like to add that the board consider maybe just a reference to where it speaks to hybrid work model, that it actually references board policy on remote work in the MOU. It would be a minor change. It wouldn't be changing anything that refers, in the actual working of it, but it would just make reference to the board policy that's already existing in that area.
If we can make that change and have that done by next week and. That's fine.
I think that, is that only in the secretary one?
I
Yeah, I
believe
think
so.
so.
I didn't
Would be
see
the only
the
one that
others.
could do it.
There's just parameters in the policy that guide the accountability there.
Okay. That is the agenda.
Well, at this point, I would like to make a motion that we adjourn.
we have to, oh yeah, because we're not voting.
This
We're not
isn't a
voting.
voting session.
But so-
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
Can I have a
normally
second?
this would be a voting session, but this is the work session.
So Roger wants out. I have a motion to adjourn.
I will second that.
All right. Thank you all very much. Have a great week.